Hello, and thanks everyone for attending today's presentation on getting started with the Instant PLUS licensing wizard. My name is Mike Wozniak, the CTO and one of the founders of Concept Software. Also helping me today with the presentation is Abram from the software development team. This is our next event in a series of technical deep dives of the various aspects of the SoftwareKey system. The SoftwareKey system for independent software vendors has been around since 1993. We have nearly 6,000 customers around the world. Many of our customers use our licensing client Protection Plus or Instant Plus by itself. However, the fun really starts when you use Solo Server to automate and manage your online business, which can be added at any time in the future. Today I'm going to talk about and demo several concepts. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the SoftwareKey system or are recently downloading a trial and evaluating, we'll give a brief overview. The main topic of today's presentation is the Instant PLUS licensing wizard. So I'm going to go through all of the steps of the wizard, discuss all options, including navigating the help. We will protect a sample Hello World application through the injection capabilities of Instant PLUS. And for exe formats that can't be injected directly, we'll talk briefly about the Instant PLUS DLL interface. I will activate and deactivate a protected application both online and manually, and briefly discuss advanced implementation using the Instant PLUS API interfaces. And if your development team automates the build process through a script, we have some features in the Instant PLUS wizard to help with that. We'll also talk about the protected application command line switches. There's a lot to cover in this webinar, so it will be recorded, so you can go through a second time at a slower pace if you need to. Your microphones are all muted. In the GoToWebinar control panel applet, you should see a question section. Feel free to type your question during the presentation and choose send. We'll be monitoring the questions along the way, responding to some directly and saving some if we have time for discussion at the end. I'm going to do a quick poll just to see who's in our audience. This is a, you can choose more than one option here. Just want to know, where are you with your use of the SoftwareKey system? Are you currently evaluating the Instant PLUS wizard? Are you already using the Instant PLUS wizard with applications in production? Or perhaps are you using the Protection Plus the licensing toolkit, our API functions to inject your application, or not inject, but inside the source code of your application? Oh, great. Most of you have submitted your votes, and surprisingly, it looks like a pretty diverse group of people. Looks like there are people that are evaluating, some that are using, but quite a few people who are using the Protection Plus licensing APIs already. Great. Thanks for that. There are two main components of the SoftwareKey licensing system. They can be used separately, but they are designed to work great together. The Instant PLUS licensing wizard and the Protection Plus licensing toolkit are the clients. They are the components or tools that are used inside of your applications which are running on your customers' computers. You can create or extend trials, implement periodic expiration, pay-per-use applications. You can license modular applications, give each customer access to specific features, implement network floating licensing to enforce a maximum number of concurrent users. It is available in several different editions. With Protection Plus version 4, we do bundle the wizard and the toolkit together in a single product. If you're watching a recorded version of this, likely we will be offering the wizard and the toolkit as separate products, since it seems that most people use one or the other. Oops, went a little too fast. The Solo Server is our flagship online license management system. It automates the software activation process while allowing you to maintain control after your software has been activated through electronic license management. There is an optional e-commerce module to automate the purchase and license delivery, plus a ton of other features such as a license database to track all of your customers, a self-service licensing portal so that your customers can see their licenses, purchase maintenance renewals, and upgrades, etc. Solo is available both as a hosted service or as software that you can host on your own IT infrastructure. And we have several other webinars that do go through features of Solo. The most popular reasons to use the Instant Plus wizard are when you want something quick and easy. If you have, the Instant Plus wizard was designed with the most commonly used and requested licensing business logic and user interface. It was designed to be easy to use, so it does have certain limitations. Rapid prototyping allows you to get a feel for the capabilities of the SoftwareKey system. Since it does integrate in with Solo, you can get a taste of the technology on for both sides. The Instant Plus wizard can only be used on desktop applications. You cannot use it on a web application or any type of a Windows service. It must have access to the desktop user interface. The interface that the customer sees, which we call the Instant Plus runtime, is available in English and Spanish. I have seen some customers hack the system to get it to run in other languages, although that's not supported. But we do not support any, even the people that have done that, we do not support any Unicode languages there. You can implement subscription licensing, modular or feature-based licensing, network floating licensing, but these are mutually exclusive. If you need a combination of any of these, makes the implementation more difficult, so it might be easier for you to use the Protection Plus licensing toolkit with our API interfaces inside of your source code. Before we take a look at the Instant Plus wizard, I'm going to jump ahead to look at a sample protected application. Here is a sample splash screen. This launches at startup. It's useful to indicate activity. As soon as your application, or as soon as your user double clicks on your icon, they will see the splash screen so that they get some kind of feedback that the application is loading. If you are using the Instant Plus wizard with our licensing server Solo, any communication that needs to occur during application startup will occur during this splash screen. You can tell the wizard which graphic to use. As you can see, we have customized the splash screen with our own graphic. The graphic must be shipped with the application. Be sure to check the deployment topic in the manual for the proper location of that graphic. And notice how we are displaying the application version, which may be useful to display to your users, and you can choose which corner of the splash screen to display that. After the splash screen is a welcome screen. This welcome screen will appear both before the product has been activated, whenever an illegal copy has been detected, or perhaps if you're doing a subscription-based license, if it's time for them to renew their subscription. Sometimes it's desirable after you've activated the product to force the redisplay of this screen in the event the user wants to change one of the license parameters or deactivate. There's a couple tricks to do that. You can hold the Shift key while launching your application, which I'll demonstrate later. And there are also some command line switches that can be used with your application shortcut, which I'll also demonstrate. And one thing to note, this is a slightly old graphic. We have updated the color scheme and icons, but I wanted to show you a user who has customized the left side with their own product logo. Customizing that logo is very similar to the splash screen, where you just choose a graphic of the correct size and the Instant Plus runtime will display it. It will show up on the left side, not only on this welcome screen, but all the subsequent screens during the runtime of the Instant Plus. I wanted to point out that our branding or name is not located anywhere inside of the protected application. You can choose the product name. As you'll see when we go through the wizard, it is displayed in the title bar as well as the top of the dialog. The evaluate button, so there's several options that the user can pick from. The purchase button can go to essentially any URL you pick. It can be your website, it can be directly into the shopping cart, wherever you want it to go. The evaluate button, the last option, allows the customer, if you want to provide the evaluation, to run the software and use it for a limited period of time. Notice how the text below the evaluate button does not have any time period there. That's just because this particular application, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation, does not have any time period. It will run forever, but they limit certain features inside of the application. Most people just do an unrestricted trial that has limited features. In that case, there would be a message below the evaluate button that said how many days are left in the evaluation. Clicking the middle button, the Activate, brings up the screen to activate. There are 3 ways to activate an application using the Instant Plus wizard. You can activate online with a direct internet connection. If this particular computer is not connected to the internet, but you have one nearby that is, you can activate online indirectly using a thumb drive, a USB key to utilize a secure activation mechanism with that computer nearby that does have internet access. The third option, which this particular protected application does not use, is a manual activation, which can be done by phone, fax, email. I'll demonstrate that later. But I just wanted to point out that that option doesn't display, because as you go through the wizard, you can turn on or off any one of these features. So let's go ahead and jump into the demo. So I have here the Instant Plus wizard graphical user interface here. It's designed to be used in minutes. Most people find it to be pretty intuitive. It is technically or typically used by a developer, someone who has designed and packaged your software. They're the ones that are going to go through the wizard, choose the options, and add the protection. It can also be used by your customer service agents if they are going to be answering the phone and responding to manual activation requests. All of the settings are stored in a project file with an extension of IPP. It's very important to keep these project files in a safe place, because the data contained in them cannot be recovered if they're lost. If you are using or protecting a new product, it's always good to start a new project. Otherwise, you can open up an existing one. As I continue through the wizard, you'll see that the left side is a dynamic help topic that changes as I go from step to step. The first decision here is the solo configuration. As I mentioned earlier, the Instant PLUS Wizard does integrate with Solo Server for automated license activation and management, although it's not required. You can sign up for a free trial of Solo in the Wizard here or from our website right on the home page of SoftwareKey.com. The last option, which some people don't realize is even a feature of Instant PLUS, is the ability to compress or protect an application, an EXE, without adding any licensing. This is good for Win32 PE files, such as Visual Basic 6, Visual C++. It does not apply to .NET EXEs or 64-bit applications. When you choose to use the Wizard without Solo, you'll notice that certain options as I go through the steps are disabled. That just means that those particular features require Solo. To save time on the demo, I am going to go ahead and connect with an existing Solo Server trial account, but I will discuss the workflow when not using Solo. Since I am using Solo, the next step is to choose an existing product in the Solo product catalog or create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and create a new product. I am asked to log in to the server. So now the left side changes from the help topic to a miniature window into the Solo interface. Every Solo account is given an author ID. That author ID is also your default login ID. You can always add additional users or logins into your account. There's no limit to the number that you can create, and this is good for tracking employee activity and permissions throughout the server application. One other thing I wanted to point out is if you happen to get any login error messages from within the Instant PLUS Wizard, go to the full browser interface and try to log into your account there. There may be some type of a message or that indicates that there's something needs to change on your account, maybe accepting terms and conditions or update your payment information. That would cause a generic error message to appear in the Wizard, but you would see the full details of that message when you logged in. So now that I'm in the Instant PLUS or in this little portal into Solo, I can click on this little question mark help, which will launch the Solo manual to a context-sensitive help topic that gives a list of all of the Solo fields and what they mean. That is true throughout all of the Solo administration pages. Without getting in too deep into the Solo server's architecture, the product catalog is a two-level hierarchy. Different variations of your product, say you had gold, silver, platinum, or you had different subscription periods or network licensing bundles. You might want to be able to leverage having multiple product options below a single product. This Add Product Wizard does add both a product and a product option, both of which are needed. Adding the new option to an existing product is done through the administration interface. So the product name is pretty self-explanatory. The default product name of license is good to get started with. Other choices could be 30-day license, 90-day license, 1-year license, etc. The product description and option description are displayed in the shopping cart's product catalog if you use it. The price is also used in the shopping cart if you want to use it. If you don't want to use the shopping cart, we recommend just put in some number greater than 0. The activations allowed indicates how many times by default a user that has a license to your software can activate online. This is, again, the default value for all new licenses. You can always reset the license for a particular customer or grant a particular user additional activations as needed. The Instant Plus Wizard does use our latest activation interfaces with Solo Server, so using the issue installation is typically checked. If you want to allow customers to deactivate your software, you can go ahead and check the allowed deactivations. You can also specify how many times they're allowed to deactivate the software before they have to contact you. So very similar to the activations allowed where you can have a default value. This is how many times they're allowed to deactivate the software before the system will reject it. This is useful to force a user to purchase multiple licenses when they are constantly trying to transfer a license back and forth when they really should have a separate license for each of the PCs that they are using. In many cases, Solo Server can detect when the user is trying to reactivate on a PC that was already activated. So checking this option will allow a subsequent activation to take place without decrementing or being hit with another activation. The IP activation mode is an advanced feature that is useful if you want to restrict the IP address where activations can come in for this license. In most cases, you would choose no restrictions. The term trigger code is a command used to activate a product. This is in the Protection Plus API. In most cases, you would choose one of the highlighted ones, 1, 10, or 11. Now our demo, we're going to give a perpetual license with no expiration, so we're going to choose trigger code 1. If you wanted to do a periodic subscription-based license, you can choose a limited number of days. The Instant Plus manual does have, under the activating a product, the trigger code descriptions, a list of all of the descriptions and what they mean in a more descriptive manner. Oh, I also wanted to point out in the manual there are several tutorials here that talk about how to do modular feature-based activations, periodic activations that are maybe useful to you as well. The system will randomize the trigger code seed and the offline activation key, leaving those default values as fine. Instant Plus will now synchronize with Solo Server. So it's going to download the trigger code seed values that were specified. So the protected product option step is next here in the wizard. This is where you choose the main workflow options that you want in the protected application. In most cases, you will start the application off as a trial. Locking the application to the PC that it's activated on is the same as copy protection. Once the application is activated, fingerprint data is recorded and checked upon each launch. Allowing the user to activate manually by phone, fax, or email is pretty self-explanatory. That we will demonstrate. Displaying the splash screen on startup is optional to entertain the user, as I showed you in the PowerPoint presentation. And when you use the Solo Server, you can also enable people to activate online, activate or directly when they have direct internet access, indirectly with a computer nearby that has internet access, and also allows the application to periodically phone home with the license server to see if the license is valid, as well as to see if there's a new version of the application available. If you happen to sell your software into retail stores or through distributors where you are going to be bulk adding licenses and giving serial numbers out to to be printed inside of packaging or given to distributors, you can use Instant Plus to capture the registered user data. So I'm essentially going to choose all the options here. The product name did download the name that I created in Solo. You can override it. This is the name that is displayed in the welcome screen. The version number can be displayed on the splash screen, as I had shown before. It also can be used during the product update version checking to see if there's a new version available. And it also is sent to Solo Server during activation, which is useful for support personnel to see what version the software the customer is running. When you are injecting an EXE or a DLL file, the auto detect version can read this resource, can read any resource that happens to be in that file and use it. Otherwise, you have to make sure that you specify a version and update it every time that you update your software. The product website and support website control links in the Instant Plus runtime on the welcome screen and the activation screen. You can put anything that you want in those links or turn the links off by removing them. The product purchase link was that first button on the welcome screen. It's going to automatically bring the user to the purchase, the shopping cart, add the item into the shopping cart in Solo, but you can override that to point to your website. Or you can just delete that string if you want to disable the purchase link. The alternate purchase link, always leave that blank unless you're using a service such as MyOfferPal to promote your product for free by having the user try services that earns credit towards you. The product logo controls the graphic on the left side of all of the Instant Plus runtime screens. This is where that Ring Factory logo that was shown in the screenshots that were in the PowerPoint presentation. Notice how, I'll point out again, that every one of these fields is identified on the left with a description of what they mean. The license file option screen essentially randomizes the data when you create a new project. The default values are typically fine. In most cases, auto-creating the license file in a registry is fine. If you want to if you have an already existing project file and you want to force everyone to reactivate the software, you could either just start a brand new project in the Instant Plus wizard, or you can come to this screen and create new license locations. It will randomize all of the fields on this screen. If you started the application off as a trial, then the trial option screen shows up. You can control the number of days or times that the trial can run with options for unlimited. You can also keep the welcome screen silent for a period of days. And you always typically want to leave this box checked, the tracking the last used time, unless you're going to deploy your software on a network drive where the user's clocks may not be completely synchronized. If you want to make the software expire on a particular drop-dead date, you can specify that here. For this demo, we're just going to leave the default value of a 30-day trial. There are several computer matching fingerprinting technology features in the Protection Plus and Instant Plus tools. The enhanced computer ID algorithm does look at 17 pieces of hardware and software settings simultaneously. You can specify a threshold value to control the strictness of the matching. In most cases, the default values on this screen are fine. Including leaving this unchecked allows the customer to restore the hardware, and if they made some changes to which tripped up the licensing, it would then allow them to restore the hardware back to the way it was to have the software continue to run. If you allow manual activation, phone, fax, or email, this is the next set of parameters. You can change the text, where to email to receive an activation code, or your telephone number. Allowing delayed trigger codes is great for email or fax licensing. It allows the application to be closed while they wait for an activation response from you. The require license ID and password is typically good to uncheck for easier manual activations, but you'll see later on that whenever you implement any of the background checking features, it's going to want to automatically come and enable this feature. The delay feature allows you to frustrate a hacker who tries to guess codes. That will essentially just add an artificial delay every time they just type in a code that's invalid. And leaving the basic key-generated detection enabled also will help slow down hackers. On the activation option screen allows you to customize the messaging seen by the user during activation. If you want to display the user, take the user to a web page after they activate, maybe to an external registration screen or other helpful information, frequently asked questions, etc., you can do that. Always be sure to leave this is a modular application unchecked. You get a warning message. It's a rarely used feature, so just leave that unchecked. This is reserved for when you have a suite of applications tied to a specific feature bit in the license file. Leaving this option checked helps prevent activating product A with a license for product B. In this case, the user will see a friendly error message instead of activation failed. Always leave this license key injection option disabled unless you want to create a gold master for deployment to a large corporation and have each workstation automatically activate against a specific license. There's no harm in checking this periodic activation or periodic expiration feature even if you're not going to use this initially. It allows you to customize the messaging and parameters that the user sees whenever their subscription is about coming due. Let's say you give the customer a 90-day license. You can start warning the user 5 days before their expiration. The grace days feature is useful if the application was not run during the warning period, so it does give an automatic extension. You can use 0 to disable this feature. Checking solo for a new expiration date during a warning or grace period is a very powerful feature for automatic background checking. Solo Server has a recurring billing engine which can advance a subscription expiration date in the database every billing cycle. So as long as the recurring billing engine is configured to charge the credit card before the warning period, it will allow continuous execution of the application while the credit card is valid. And the user would end up only seeing the messaging on this page if there was a problem with their credit card. If you had wanted to take the user to a different website for purchasing renewals or subscription extensions, then where you would take them on a new purchase, you can override the purchase URL here. And it's good to always check this option whenever you're activating online to download the expiration date from Solo. So if you chose the option for a splash screen, this is where you can use our very beautiful default splash screen, which looks like this, or you can upload your own. You can change the text color and background color and display where you want the version number to appear. If you sell through retail or other distributors, as I mentioned before, and you chose the option for allowing registration, this is where you can make the registration optional or required and use a built-in activation dialog or take the user to your website to register. Now, each license in Solo Server has an overall status flag, and that must be OK, literally the string OK, in order to activate and run. Each activation that is granted also generates an installation ID. This is specific to each PC and can be revoked without affecting the overall license or other PCs which happen to be activated. This background checking options is a very powerful screen. It's used to validate the overall license status as well as the installation ID status. It's important when allowing license transfer and license deactivations to utilize this feature. This screen does allow granular control. Checking the first box is not recommended, and it requires execution to be validated on every time the application is run. The second two checkboxes designate when communication with Solo is attempted. A common scenario might be to attempt license validation every 7 days, require license validation every 30 days, and start to warn the user 7 days before lockout. So in this case, every day from the 7th day through the 21st day, communication will be attempted. No response from the server will not display, will essentially display no error message. Starting at day 21, the designated warning message will start to be displayed. And starting at the 30th day, the software will no longer run, prompting the user specifically that they need to contact that it must contact the licensing server to validate. When a successful communication with Solo returns that the response is that the software should be revoked or deactivated, you can control the message that the user sees. For purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and leave these options unchecked. Oh, the message that I just dismissed was a warning that essentially told me that the require license ID and password option was not checked on the activation option screen. So it was essentially telling me that it was turning that feature back on. The Instant Plus and Solo Server system has a very basic system for notifying licensed users when a new version of the application is available. This screen controls how often the check is performed. It can run at different intervals from the background license checking on the previous screen. During the interval period, it does send up the product ID, product name, and version number, which was previously specified. Solo Server has a table of rules defining actions for each version to either notify the user or automatically download the software update. So I'm going to go ahead and save my Instant Plus project file, IPP. So now I have that file saved. There are two ways to use the Instant Plus wizard. Injection does work with Win32 PE files, again mentioning before Visual Basic 6, Visual C++, and the Instant Plus DLL can work with any language that can call DLLs. If I try to inject an existing .NET application, I happen to have one here. I will receive a message saying that there is a incompatible file format. Click Help for more information. This will talk to you about the two different ways of using Instant Plus, both injecting as well as using the Instant Plus DLL. If I go back and choose the option for creating a secure file for use with the Instant Plus DLL, you can see that it generates a decryption key used by the Instant Plus DLL. I'll talk about the protected application options in a moment. But what you do on this page is you save an encrypted XML file with all the license parameters. Unlike the Instant Plus file or project file, which stays on your computer only, this XML file is shipped with the application. It's important that whenever you change your Instant Plus settings, that you must generate a new XML file so that it inherits the new settings. The Help Me Integrate This goes to a help topic with links to tutorials on how to do this with several different applications, especially C# and VB.NET. There's also a separate webinar on our website called Using a Protection Plus with Visual Studio.NET Apps that covers these tutorials in a webinar format. I have a Visual C++ application, so I'm going to go ahead and protect that. So I specified here, I browsed to my unprotected file. I chose an output folder to where I wanted to write the protected file. You must include the protected version of your executable in your installer. If you're injecting a DLL, you need to check this box since since DLLs have certain limitations as to what code can be run inside of DLL main. Each of the options on this page are described on the left side here. The default values are fine for most apps. Any incompatibilities found when testing your application, you can try turning off certain features here or changing the compression mechanism. You can, we will talk briefly later about using the Instant Plus API, but this option here is needed to be checked whenever you do want to use the Instant Plus API. So I wanted to point that out while we were here. You can control your application's ability from running in a virtual machine environment or a terminal service environment by simply checking off these options. So when I go ahead and I'm not wrapping a DLL, so I can use the default values here. I'm not going to use the API. So it's injecting itself. Now if I go and look at my C++ output folder, I now have a protected version of my application. One thing to note is every time you go through this process, the Instant Plus GUI does reset your license back to a trial period. We assume that you are going to want to test an activation. So every time you go through it, you're going to have to reactivate your machine. However, if you use the same IPP file, your end users will not need to reactivate. You will be able to control when the customer activates or need to activate based upon starting with a new project file or using that one option that I showed you to generate new keys. It's always good to test all scenarios of your protected application. Virtual machine host software such as VirtualBox are free. You can test fresh operating systems that have never had your software. You can use snapshotting to reset the OS back to the uninstalled state. If I double click on this application, I'm going to see a error message about error 42, cannot initialize application. By default, we store licensing information in shared secure locations. This allows multiple users on the same PC to share license information with a single activation. The deployment topic in the Instant Plus manual does describe an important command line switch to use in your installer to avoid having this error appear in your application. Most installers it's very easy command to add in to avoid having that application occur. As a shortcut for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and run this as an administrator once. You see our wonderful little default splash screen. And whenever I run the application later, it will not display an error. So I'm going to go through, and you can see now we have the unconfigured GUI with the newer look and feel without any type of customizations on the left. So I'm going to first show how to activate manually using the Instant Plus wizard. So if I go ahead and activate manually, so this is what the customer is going to see on their computer. They're going to either email these numbers or call you, and you're going to read those numbers to you. You would have to come here and open up your IPP file that was used to protect your application, click Activate a Product, create the activation codes on this computer, and now the user would read you those two numbers here. And click Generate. Now this is the number that you were going to read to the customer over the phone. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it and paste it since I'm running both applications on the same computer. And then the activation was successful. So now I have my wonderful Hello World application that was protected and activated. If I come back to that folder, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and double click, you'll notice two things. First off, I did not see the error 42 message. That's because I did run as administrator that one time. And again, if you modify your installer as per the deployment topic to set up the permissions, then you will not even ever see that error 42 message. So it says here the application was launched while holding the Shift key on your keyboard. Do you wish to activate or reactivate your application now? I'll hit yes. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do what is a manual deactivation. So this is a customer that wants to deactivate this particular computer. So I'm going to choose the option to activate manually. And again, the customer is going to read you these two numbers, and I'm going to choose the command trigger code 50 to deactivate the license. So I now have the code that I need to read to the customer to deactivate. And when I do that, it's going to have a green bar that says the activation was successful, even though it was a deactivation command, with the deactivation code 8477146. You'll notice here, that's the same code that's displayed here. This gives us confirmation when the user reads us this number that they have turned off or they have actually deactivated this application. And if I were to run the software again, it's going to come back up to the activation screen. Now, I'm going to repeat the process for an online activation. So I'm logged in to Solo Server, and I am going to use a very fast way of getting a license. So I am going to click on the Customers Add Test License. Test licenses are an easy way to create a development license. They are deleted on the 1st of every month. Therefore, they are free, and you never want to use them with real customers because customers, the licenses will be removed from the system. So once I have gotten a license ID and password from Solo Server, I can come back, I can activate the software, choose to activate online, I can paste in the ID and randomized password here. This information is given to the user when they activate the software. Or when they purchase online. Or you can give them this license ID and password when they purchase from you directly. Activating online is a very quick process. If I come back, now the software will run, my little Hello World program, and if I come back and look at the activation history, I can see when they activated, what IP address they activated from, the installation ID that was assigned, what version of the software they activated. Due to time constraints, I'm not going to demonstrate the activate from another computer indirectly. I'm going to show you real quick the topic in the Instant Plus manual for the command line switches. The command line switches are shortcuts that can be used by your protected application to force specific behavior. The OpenLF command is used in your installer, as referenced in the deployment topic, to set up the permissions for all users. Again, only needed to be done one time in your installer. The act continue command will force the welcome screen to appear, which is an alternative to the holding down the shift key on application launch. And then the deactivate command line switch will perform an online deactivation process. I'm going to demonstrate that real quick. I'm going to open up a command line prompt. And if I type in my executable with the /deactivate, it will now come up and say, do you wish to deactivate your installation? Yes. The installation was successfully deactivated. You can now activate from another computer. If I come back to the Solo page, the activation history, and refresh, I can now see that the status has been deactivated and when it was deactivated. So the user can now activate the software on another computer. You can also create a shortcut like we do. We have a Deactivate workstation shortcut that just simply opens up our program with the /deactivate switch. So I can go into the Start menu and choose the shortcut to deactivate a workstation, and it will do the same thing as what I just showed on the command line. So going back to the Instant Plus help, remember that Instant Plus can be used to inject both Win32 PE files, or the Instant Plus DLL interface can be used for other languages such as .NET, Access, or even Office applications that use scripting environments. Normally, the Instant Plus runtime that runs at your application startup will tell your application to run or not run. So it only runs during the start of your application and give you a proceed or not proceed response. However, for more sophisticated integrations, the Instant Plus Advanced API allows you to tap into a library of functions for additional control during runtime. Don't confuse the Instant Plus API with the DLL. There are two different topics in the manual, and not to further confuse you, but when you are using the Instant Plus DLL interface, the API functions are actually located in the same DLL as the Instant Plus, the main function that runs at application startup. These API functions all start with the WR_ function. The API is not available in all editions of Protection Plus, so make sure that your product license includes support for the Instant Plus API if you wish to use it. Also remember that on the protected application screen, you do need to check that option, I wish to use the Instant Plus API, as well as you must always call the WR_close to free up resources when your application is shutting down. The Instant Plus API can be used for modular applications, network floating features, or to call various Instant Plus runtime dialogues from within your menus. For example, Instant Plus was protected with itself, so I can come to the help, upgrade Instant Plus license, and now you see our activation dialog with our product logo and an activation screen. Also, our help about Instant Plus does display the license ID and installation. These are both obtained from the Instant Plus API. There are several samples included in the samples folder for using both the Instant Plus DLL interface with different languages, as well as using the Instant Plus API. I know we got started a little bit late, so we're running a little bit over. Only a couple more topics to discuss. The build automation, for those of you who have a build process to execute the steps to create your software installers, it is possible to automate the building and protecting of your application using the Instant Plus portion by saving your IPP file and then using this IP console command line. You can use the IP console to do the injection, or if you're using the DLL interface, to automatically create the XML file. So today we talked about several things. Instant Plus has thousands of lines of code implementing the most commonly used and requested licensing business logic and user interface. It can be implemented in most desktop applications with little or no source code changes. It's great for rapid prototyping and experimentation with the SoftwareKey licensing system. It can run alone or fully integrate with Solo Server for automated license activation and management. We covered a lot of ground today, so there will be a recorded version of this along with the rest of our recorded webinars on our website. So we're right at our allocated time. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We will stick around to see if there are questions for anyone that would like to stick around.